Everybody, and welcome back to a very special LinkedIn Live with me, Claire Braund, from Women on Boards. This week, we're talking NAIDOC Week, NAIDOC 2025. The theme, of course, is Strength, Vision and Legacy, which celebrates both the achievements of the past and the bright future ahead, highlighting the strength of young leaders, the vision of communities, and the legacy of ancestors. It also commemorates this year the 50th anniversary of NAIDOC Week, a journey that began as a movement for recognition and rights for First Nations peoples. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Claire Beattie, proud Yorta Yorta woman, executive at NAB and chair of the WOB Cultural Diversity and First Nations Committee. Hello and welcome, Claire.
Thank you, and Yama. Hi, Claire, and hi, WOB Mob.
Claire, you believe in being the change and making a difference in everything that you do. Can you just tell us a little bit about your story and what drives you?
Yes, and I'll say Gupagaka Yorta Yorta Walker Ngartha Claire. I'm a proud Yorta Yorta woman. My name is Claire and my totem's the long-necked turtle. I'm coming to you live from the lands of the Gweagal people of the Darwin Nation and pay my respects to elders past and present. Their totem here is the whale. And my totem actually is a long-necked turtle. It means I stick my neck out for mob and I've got a bloody hard shell if anyone wants to have a crack all day, every day. But the whale, she is the best at true co-design. So she allows us to do things with people, not to them. She's a large animal and she doesn't move anyone unless it's at a pace that is set together, and she allows other creatures to live on her skin, dropping off at will. So I like to remind people when they're doing acknowledgement of country, it's not do it as fast as you can to get to a meeting. It's not read off a piece of paper. It is to actually know the country that you're on, because I believe spirit provides. So you need to ask country to be on that land and get permission. You also, knowing the totem, it tells you why you're there. So I'm a long-necked turtle trying to be a whale. I might be highly resilient and really hard-shelled, but on a day like today, I'm being taught to be the best at true co-design. So to answer your question, I believe in being the change and making a difference, because I believe, as I said, that spirit provides. And when I go back to country, I'm going to leave nothing but my bones. I'm going to give everything I can. So I'm that long-necked turtle giving everything back to mob. In terms of being the change and making a difference, well, we can all do that. And the true spirit of reconciliation is us playing the black and the white keys to play beautiful music. The reason why I say that on this day in particular, and apologies to any First Nations or Torres Strait Islanders or Aboriginal people who are watching today, because I'm about to speak of someone who's passed, but Uncle Greg Sims, who's a famous Darug elder, famous because I just believe he is. He was a deadly human being, very cheeky, but had the best saying, and that's his saying, it's not mine. It was his mother's saying, actually. And playing the black and the white keys to make beautiful music is how we're going to reconcile together. I can't sprint off and have all the cultural knowledge and leave you behind. You can't sprint off because you've had certain privilege and leave me behind. So when I say I believe in being the change and making a difference, I'm walking in the footsteps that my ancestors left. I walk into every room like the ancestors opened that door for me. And I believe that I've been placed on spirit, on country, to ensure that we can all walk together and ensure better futures for my people and for all people. Because a very basic logical fact is that if you and I both pay taxes, we have better roads, better hospitals and better schools. So I'd love everyone to be paying taxes. And I'd love my people to have first world problems, not third world problems, which is the ability to be self-determined and have jobs and pay for things. And their biggest problem to be that their mobile phone runs out and their Porsche comes in the wrong silver, or Tesla, whichever way you go. Not that we have third generation unemployment and that we're referred to as broken and disadvantaged, because I've never been broken and disadvantaged in my life.
Lovely. That's really beautiful. Thank you, Claire. I love it when you speak. I can listen to you talk about the long-necked turtle and the whale, and the way you speak about that every single time. And that notion of walking into a room with others present and around you, I think is a really lovely concept, because it speaks about, it's not just about self. And I think that's something that everybody really should be doing too. NAIDOC Week rolls around every year, and we mightn't understand or appreciate its history or its full significance. Can you tell us a bit about the history of NAIDOC, what it means, and why it's something that should be celebrated by all Australians?
I love that. And Claire, look, I think you're a good example, you and Nicole, of my deadly allies, right? So a definition of an ally is a mate, a friend. We're big on mateship in Australia. And a friend or a mate is someone who's with you in the bad times, not the good, right? So you're down for the good, but you're always down for the bad. And I believe that we as First Nations, and I'll speak to the history of NAIDOC, have been left during the bad times. And so allyship is standing strong with us. You might need us to explain things, and we might need you to explain things. We need to walk together. But at the same time, you don't leave us when it gets hard. And what we've seen recently is people drop diversity and inclusion when it no longer suits them politically. It's no longer popular. So we don't need to do that thing, women and including them. Don't need that. And people who might identify as women or might identify as something else, that was popular for a bit, but that's just a trend that's gone now. Do you know how long it's going to take for those companies to get us back once they've broken that trust? And you need us. You need us to reflect the customer of which you serve, and you need us for innovation. So good luck. I think NAIDOC, the history of NAIDOC has been around since the 1920s. It's not a new thing. First Nations people before the 1967 referendum, before when we were plants and animals in our own country, fauna and flora, with no human rights, we were fighting for those human rights. And so we actually had one of the largest civil protests in terms of a civil march for civil rights way before the 1967 referendum. We were saying, please walk with us. Please count us as humans. Please give us dignity. Please treat us in the way that you'd wish to be treated. So long before the 1967 referendum, we had in the 1920s and the 1930s First Nations activists, if you want to call them that, or just people wanting to be treated as humans in their own country, fighting for this. And this is where NAIDOC started. So NAIDOC has been around since the 1920s. We have also been meeting as a committee well before there was Aboriginal Affairs. So Aboriginal Affairs came about, the department itself, after the 1967 referendum. So the elders, the aunties and uncles, the deadly, powerful First Nations people, and remember that we're the oldest living culture, over 67,000 years old, have been fighting since colonisation for us to have a voice and for us to be treated with respect. So NAIDOC, what does NAIDOC Week mean? It's different to Reconciliation Week. Reconciliation is playing the black and white keys to make beautiful music and us walking together. NAIDOC is celebrating the fact that we are deadly, we are strong, we are resilient, we're the oldest living culture. And to be fair, given that we've lost language, a lot of our languages are now dead because of the result of colonisation, because of the massacres and the atrocities of the past. This is about saying we're always has been and always will be Aboriginal land, and we're still here. So this is quite different. NAIDOC is seen as the culmination of history to a celebration. And no, we didn't get the vote this time, but it's saying that we have come a long way and we've fought really hard for that. How do you help celebrate, Claire, as my ally, as my friend? Then you do this, right? You sit and have a yarn with us and you don't make me do the heavy lifting. If I can implore one thing of the audience today, it is that we should not be asking Aboriginal people to do the heavy lifting, or First Nations people, towards reconciliation. So the way I like to remember it is, Claire and I are friends. If it was my birthday, particularly a big, important birthday like NAIDOC, then you would throw the party for me and you'd invite me. You wouldn't say, oh, Claire, it's your birthday. You better make the cake and you better buy all the food and you better, and I'll be like, oh, I don't want a birthday. This is a lot of work for my birthday. Are you my friend? If you're my friend, you throw the celebration and you invite me to come along and I get to celebrate. I don't have to do all the things and also bear all the trauma. Because talking about the hard stuff, including people in our families that have passed away, or the fact that some of us can't speak language, which was our birthright that has been removed, is not a great story to tell a lot of the time. So please, if you're a part of a corporation, if you're on a board, for the heaven's sake, please don't make us do the heavy lifting. If we want to, happy days. If I want to throw my own birthday party, fantastic. Please don't make me do it. Please don't presume I want to do it. So when we put this together, Claire and Nicole said, what do you reckon we should do for NAIDOC, Wob? And I went, oh, well, what if we have a yarn? Because that's kind of nice and it's relaxed and I'm not having to buy all this food and cupcakes. And remember that cupcakes never saved a First Nations person unless it came from First Nations business. And then it adds to economic prosperity. Otherwise, your cupcakes are doing nothing for us. So this was culturally appropriate. This was allyship, and this was made together. Claire and Nicole didn't say, Claire, tap dance for me. Come, perform. They said, what shall we do together? So this is allyship. And this, to me, is how I want to celebrate NAIDOC with my friends, Claire and Nicole, and you guys.
Thank you. And it's lovely for us to be able to do it as well. And of course, with the wider WOB and LinkedIn community, who I can see some popping in some comments now. Of course, it marks 50 years of NAIDOC, which commenced, as we said, for the movement for recognition. 1975, that was a big year. Marked the end of the Vietnam War, the founding of Microsoft, should anyone be interested. The first woman reached summit of Mount Everest in 1975, and the dismissal, of course, of the Australian Whitlam government. The journey of and legacy of those First Nation elders has been significant, and you touched on them earlier, the aunties and uncles, those extraordinary people who had the vision to create this. How do you, as a I suppose, inheritor of that, Claire, see their significance within NAIDOC?
Look, I touched on some of the amazing things people have done in the past, but we're still fighting. I feel it every day with the ancestors. As I said, I feel like they've opened a door when I walk through that room. I have to throw my shoulders back and say, back your deadly self, even though I might be the only woman in that room or the only woman of colour, God forbid, in that room. Oh no, diversity and inclusion, God mad, there's one of us. But I think the history of oppression sits heavy with us. And these aunties and uncles have tried to lighten that load by fighting. To this day, grandmas against removal are still fighting for kids not to be taken into the system. The stolen gen that we apologised for, some would argue is still occurring at volume. So I think the fight is not over. It is being handed to the younger ones to take sometimes the fight, but we have learned. And the one thing I would say also is often my people are not described with a very positive discourse. The media in particular, Claire, and this is not shame on you, I know you worked in media but don't represent it, but the words used to describe my people, disadvantaged, broken, vulnerable. You call me that, you'd be walking over, you'd be limping back, bro. Don't you dare call me those words if you're my friend. You would call me, as I said, resilient. You would call me deadly. You would call me amazing, or whatever you'd like to call me if you're my true friend. Since when have you said this is my friend Stella and she's disadvantaged and vulnerable? You'd never do that. And these wonderful, and yes, whilst we've had a horrible history of atrocities and massacres, I'm not saying it's been easy, but what has come out of that is standing tall in culture. What has come from that is a strength that can't be denied. And I will never be as smart as my ancestors. I will never be as culturally knowledgeable, unfortunately. I wish I could be, but it's been taken from me. But I can stand on the shoulders of giants. They fought for me not to be a plant or animal. They fought for me to be able to vote in my own country. My father carried a certificate of exemption when he came back from fighting in World War II for our country. They gave him a certificate that said, you will not practice your customs, you will not speak your language, you will not associate with other Aboriginal people if you want a job. That's how they said thank you to my dad. So I stand on the shoulders of the dignified, amazing, resilient, intelligent elders and ancestors that went before me, who know everything. And what I'd love for everyone today is if you work in media, if you write anything, if you work in government, please, for the love of Pete, stop calling us those words. Please stop telling people they're allowed to call us those names. If we've had it hard, then make it better for us. Give us hope. Say we're aspirational, not disadvantaged. I'd rather that for my kids. I'd rather them growing up with pride. There is no pride in those words.
And I think it's interesting that you're talking about that, Claire, because I love the theme, the next generation strength, vision and legacy, celebrating both the past but also the future. So you've given us a little bit about what your vision for First Nations people is in terms of economic prosperity, in terms of how we talk about people and all of those sorts of things. Can you encapsulate anything else or pick up on anything else around your vision for First Nations people?
And I want to give a shout out to my deadly brother, William Tyrrell, who's watching now, because he's amazing and he's a good example of the next generation who just makes us all proud and has a great business. So if you need a business or any help from William, just hit him up. He's wonderful and deadly, and I've known him for some years now. And you make me proud, brother. I think my vision is exactly that. My vision is that we are no longer called those words, that we are expected in every room because this is our country. We were here first, right? So First Nations people, we should be expected to be everywhere. We should be expected to be your doctor. We should be expected to be your lawyer. We should be expected to be in all those places, not just in the places where you've made space for us. And for that, I mean the lower entry roles. We still see in government and other large corporations, we see the lower entry roles offered to my people. And that's okay. You've got to start somewhere. That's great. But don't expect us to stay there. Make room for us everywhere. I'm a senior person, not senior Aboriginal person, not senior female person. I am a senior person. I have done the many, many hard years and the many, many degrees to get where I am. And people should not be surprised that I'm in that room. I don't want there to be surprise that our kids go to Harvard. I don't want there to be surprise that some of our kids are going to be astronauts. Some of them are already there, right? I want us to be everywhere. And I want it to, instead of being and I get this, I get people going, you went to uni? Yeah. Did you? Cool. You're also a senior person. How amazing. We all went to uni. Shall we all high five now? Nah, you should expect if we wanted to go to uni, yeah, we can go to uni because we're very, very smart.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'd like to leave as a legacy piece is I tell kids all the time they're diamonds. Why? First Nations kids are rare. Unfortunately, we only make up 3.2% of the population. We're rare. We're also being made under pressure. As I told you, the history of atrocities that have been made, we were made under pressure. And we are expensive because people need us. We don't need them. Every single workforce seems to want First Nations people as a goal. Well, guess what? We are expensive. We've been made under pressure. We are brilliant and we are rare, which makes us diamonds. So I want our kids to shine like diamonds and to know that they are diamonds and to be respected as such. Because you don't walk around with like a ring that's a big, 3-carat diamond going, oh, I don't care if I lose it. You respect it and you value it. That's what I want for our kids.
Lovely. Love that. I think that's really nice and kids can really see that. Finally, I've come to realise my own experience of First Nations people. I grew up in regional New South Wales. You and I have spoken about this. We'll discuss this in later LinkedIn Lives. Needs me to challenge, tell and own my truth on my journey to reconciliation as a very privileged white person. So how important is it for white Australia to truth tell alongside their First Nations brothers and sisters?
I think it's friendship. If you stuff up, put your hand up, say you did it. If I stuff up, I'll put my hand up, say I did it, right? So I think it's, if we're really friends, if we're really allies, if we're really mates, then I think you're honest about it. I didn't get this right, did I? And we can work through it. Or maybe you did get it right and you're just having that white fright thing. So how do we have those conversations? Claire, you and I have had them over the years where you're like, oh, I'm scared about this, or, oh, this is what happened when I was growing up. That's your truth. That's your truth. I'm not hurt by it. That's what happened when you're growing up. And it doesn't mean that's who you are now. Like, it's not that you did anything bad. It's just you grew up with a society that believed First Nations were X. And that's what you heard. Right? But now you're older and you're more educated and you're surrounded by more First Nations friends, that we can be X, Y, Z, So I think one of the things we need to remember is until 1972, in the state of New South Wales, First Nations were not to be educated. We were exempt from education until 1972 under the Clean, Clad and Courteous policy. Hello. So when you start saying things like, I don't know why there's a closing the gap. I don't know why they're, behind in education, because you started running and we couldn't join you, right? It was an unfair race. Many of us could not be educated until 1972 because principals would not let us in the front door and our parents were scared that we'd be taken by the welfare. So I think in terms of owning that, instead of shaming us and not being a friend and going, you're not quite where I am yet. Well, then walk with me. Teach me some stuff. Introduce me to your networks, because Claire, you got awesome networks, right? You got WOB. You got all the first privileged people in WOB. And I don't know all of you, but I'd love to meet all of you. And you don't know me, but I'm hoping you want to meet me. So together, again, playing the black and white keys, we can make beautiful music, and it's owning it. You and I've had some real tough chats over the years, and that's okay. You know why? Because we're friends. That's how you do it.
I absolutely love that, Claire. It's been a pleasure to talk to you as always. I could talk to you all day. And I think that concept of, don't not do anything for NAIDOC week. Don't not understand it. Don't not go and have a difficult conversations with your First Nations neighbour or your First Nations colleague, or somebody that because I have found that I've rung Claire and I've said, I'm not sure if I've got this right. Can you just help me here? Because you're a friend. And so that's what we need to be doing, not be walking in fear and walking in fear around each other. And I think that that's something that, the great theme of NAIDOC Week is for 2025 can absolutely celebrate. Claire, thank you so much. I'm super looking forward to our next conversations, which we have called Walking Together, Black and White Conversations. Claire has alluded to it with, playing the black and white keys and making beautiful music together. So thanks everyone for joining us today, and stay tuned for the next ones.